Welcome to the OBR streaming network. This is a brand new edition of The React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic Pete Smith. You can follow him on X at _Pete Smith _ and on bluesky.social. What is going on, Pete?
Not too much. Another newsy week, and then obviously we've got not only the Browns but the college football playoff this weekend, which should be interesting.
Yes, looking forward to the college football playoff a great deal. Think it'll be fun. Some games specifically more than others. What's up to everybody in the chat filing in? Appreciate you guys being here tonight to watch The React. If you're watching over on X, hop on over to youtube.com/Orange and Brown Report. And give us a like and a subscribe and hop in this chat over here if you want. Just throwing it out there for you. To start off the show tonight, Pete, before we get into, there's lots to discuss, right? There's much to discuss tonight. As I guess we try to frame what the quarterback position is going to kind of look like in 2025. There's a lot of questions about that. Some things have happened that have, with Cousins, and there's some things out there that worth talking about. We're going to examine tonight. I did want to bring up to start the show and just kind of gauge where you're at with Nick Chubb at this point in time. He is. Do you expect him to be back on the roster next year on a similar deal, or are you concerned that that's it for him with the Browns?
I expect he'll be back. I don't know what that contract's going to look like.
Right.
Certain heartless staff members of the OBR are only willing to pay him $2 million. Look, he doesn't have to have surgery. It's going to recover naturally. So as long as he has a smooth recovery, this shouldn't be. And they suggested it was on the minor side, which is the thing I was worried about, that it would have been a weird break that had a lengthy healing process. So it shouldn't derail him in the offseason and what becomes an important offseason for him to continue to work back from the knee. The only concern I have is that it's the same leg, not because that somehow makes it more likely to injure itself. It means he can't really, maybe there's something he can do that I don't know about, but it makes it so he can't really do anything with that knee until his foot is good and he can get back going from that standpoint. So no, I expect he will be back. Now it's a question of what the running back room is going to look like around him, what the running game as a whole is going to look like around him, which is, injury or not, was going to be a huge deal anyway. So it's unfortunate. It's a shame he got hurt, that he has to end the season on injured reserve. But I have no reason to expect anything less than Nick Chubb to be back next year.
Yeah. It's an area that had to be addressed anyways. If they want any chance of really having success, these options at quarterback aren't, there's no golden god coming in to play quarterback next year. It's probably going to be a journeyman or a rookie. And in order to find success that, we've talked about it at length, you're going to have a running game, and you're going to have to add weapons in that area. So something to keep an eye on as we approach the draft, because it is a relatively good class for that, correct?
Outstanding class for the running back position. Obviously, underclassmen still have to formally declare. But even if none of them come out, it would still be a talented group. But I think it's just going to be bolstered by the amount of players that want to enter the draft. I think you're going to be able to get quality players well into day 3, that 4th, 5th round, 6th round area, potentially undrafted free agent. You could draft 2. And you'd be very happy with what you got, most likely, or draft 1 and get an undrafted free agent. But there are a lot of different shapes and sizes in terms of styles all over the place. A lot of fun guys, including a couple that will be playing this weekend. The one benefit you get with the playoff is I don't think anybody's going to sit out for people who are worried about that sort of thing, you're going to get a chance to sort of watch these guys. Just off the top of my head, obviously there's the Ohio State guys who I'm not super high on, but I really like Nick Singleton from Penn State. I really like Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State. I really like Brashard Smith from SMU. If you can get over the fumbles, he's really interesting. So there's just this, even throughout this playoff, you're going to see a lot of really good running backs. Dylan Sampson might be the best, might be the top guy who's going to be playing for Tennessee. So a phenomenal field, and that's just a sample of some of the guys that are going to be in this class.
Yeah, I'm with you, Chef. Big fan of Scatterbo. Yeah, so lots to watch there. That'll be fun. All right, so we're gonna start off tonight's show. The big news of the week for your Brownies. They are transitioning to a new quarterback, starting quarterback. DTR will Dorian Thompson-Robinson taking over as the starting quarterback, as reported and broken by the OBR and Brad Stainbrook. We will go ahead and pop in on a video here as PFT, Pro Football Talk, Florio and Sims react to the decision to go with DTR.
We already talked at length about Kirk Cousins being benched by the Falcons. The Browns are benching Jameis Winston for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. We saw it happen during the game on Sunday against the Kansas City Chiefs after 3 interceptions from Winston. And Chris, here's where I'm struggling with this one, because the Browns got away with tanking in the past. Hugh Jackson made an issue about this because they had a system in place that paid out bonuses to coaches and executives based upon cap money that was carried over, draft picks that were stockpiled. It was all the things that tanking can get you. And if you do these things to get these bonuses, you're going to be worse this year. You're going to trade off guys for draft picks. You're not going to spend money. My point is this. Is it a kind of a soft tank to go with DTR, or would it be a soft tank to keep Jameis Winston out there?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's more, I mean, you're right. You could say either way there. That's why I don't know this is necessarily for tanking. I don't. I think it's a little bit of like, hey, you haven't played well. You've had some really dumb interceptions as of late. The game was there for the taking against the Chiefs. We fumbled the opening punt after we went 3 and out, and then, Jameis, you made some mistakes that are just unforgivable. You know, that right there, we called a deep shot. He just throws it in the double coverage. People underneath are open. He had somebody open for a 15-yard curl right down the middle. Here's the third quarter. Let's get back into the rhythm of the game and get going. It's a check down. He misses the target by 3 feet. And then the third one's the one that's unforgivable because they had kind of gotten the momentum on their side. They're in field goal range. It's 21-7 right here. And you throw this ball into the back of the end zone? That when that happened, I believe in the viewing room, I said, oh, he's done. They're going to take him out now. That's it. And then we saw DTR a few minutes later going in. They want DTR to be, I think, their backup for a long, long time. I think they'd like that to happen. And so now's a chance for him to get reps and do that because I don't expect Jameis Winston to be back in Cleveland next year. That's for sure.
And here's the key. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is on a contract for 2 more years at very affordable numbers. If you're going to have $46 million, 25 and 26 tied up in Deshaun Watson, you got to have cheap option on the roster. So I think it's going to be Watson, someone else, and DTR next year. Maybe Kirk Cousins, who knows, but somebody cheap, a veteran they can get cheap, and DTR. And I don't think Deshaun Watson's going to play. Again, they have to pay him. They don't have to play him. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks.
Interesting. I noticed that Florio has changed his tune on Watson playing. That didn't seem so definitive the last time we listened to Mike Florio talk.
Agreed.
So I don't view this as tanking at all. And I've outlined this before. It runs against the Browns' interest to tank. If they're going to tank, and look at this, you know, a local reporter who I will avoid naming basically got into an argument with Kevin Stefanski. Why aren't you quitting on the season? This is not how the Browns are going to operate. They have preached a message since Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have arrived. It would completely undermine everything they're trying to do if they lose intentionally. And if you are going to lose intentionally, the first thing you would do is shut down Myles Garrett without question. And I understand people who are concerned about that, who would say, like, and this is one of the main arguments I will make, the NFL season is too long. Should be 16 games. I know one more game isn't a huge deal relative to the length, but this is why I hate this, is because you end up playing potentially multiple games that don't mean anything, and you risk these type of situations where, and we've seen it, where guys got hurt, not necessarily in Cleveland, but in other places where you've had season-ending injuries, the last game of the season in a game that did not matter for that particular team.
Nick Chubb.
Well, I mean, yes, I would like to think, yeah, unfortunately, you don't want to have your 4 games to go and they're meaningless.
I know.
You're not wrong.
Still.
You're not wrong. But yeah, so that part of it is frustrating. But yeah, look, even when we talked about this and we broke the story of, we've sort of, subscribers know that the Browns were getting DTR ready for the Chiefs. And DTR even admitted after the fact, they had a package for him, everything else. He had been repping, as we reported, and now they go from repping to now starting. And some of that is obviously, Jameis. Obviously we talked about this. My hope was that it was DTR would simply earn the ability to get out there. I hope that is still where this is rooted, and not just throwing him out there because Jameis was bad. Larger thing is that Jameis Winston is a known quantity. You know exactly what he is. Now, this last game really hurt his negotiating ability, which does have some weird value for the Browns. If they were to go back to that route, as I've said, I think it opens the door for the Browns to now look at everything and look at more of their options. I still wouldn't necessarily rule out Jameis Winston, just because we don't know where this is going to go, and they can't rule anything out right now. But they don't benefit, like whether it's Jerry Jeudy or the defensive guys or any number of things. Those guys don't benefit if DTR goes out and sucks. They want positive momentum. They want things to go well, and they want DTR to go play winning football. And Chris Sims sort of laid out part of it is they do want him to be part of this team. The Browns have on multiple occasions rejected trade interest. Now, I don't know what the trade interest was, but if they didn't think much of DTR, they could have easily offloaded him for something. I don't want to bury the kid before he's dead. It doesn't mean he couldn't necessarily be a starter. Now, is he going to be a franchise quarterback? I doubt it. But, speaking for only myself, I think he's way more talented than a lot of people give him credit for.
Yeah.
And
I do too.
Like there are quarterbacks that are going to be in this class that people are like more excited about. And I would rather have DTR in 2 years under his belt than those guys. So I hope nothing for the best from DTR. I hope, like when it was the Steelers and the Broncos where he had the full time to prepare, you got a much better result. I hope he's able to prove that he can stay healthy. But no, the Browns, if DTR can lead them to 3 wins, Kevin Stefanski is going to be fired up about those 3 wins. And if you watched Hard Knocks, you saw Kevin Stefanski basically going, this isn't an effort issue. This isn't a want to issue. This is 6 turnovers issue. Yeah. Like, he's not wrong. They could have beat the Chiefs if they don't turn the ball over. Any part of me thinks that Kevin Stefanski's like incentivized to lose. And even if you thought that, my question then becomes, for what? Like, don't get me wrong. There are players I really like that are going to be available. Mason Graham, Abdul Carter, some of these other guys that I may be really interested in if the Browns are picking in the top 10. But that is not an incentive enough for me to say, just lose out because that now carries over to potentially whatever impact it's going to have with the players you want that matter. And it's going to potentially impact how you are viewed by free agents. And then is there going to be a feeling that, the coaching staff and the GM are on the hot seat. They need to win now. Do I really want to bet my career on these guys as opposed to finishing out strong, giving yourself some momentum potentially, and giving reason to believe that they are close to turning around. The season is more of an aberration in a weird situation than necessarily just an indictment of the organization as a whole. So we'll see.
Do you see another win on the Black Dog 5 in the chat says, I don't see another win this year. Do you see a win on the schedule?
They could beat the Bengals this week. I mean,
yeah.
The Bengals defense is terrible. Now I'm terrified of Trey Hendrickson against Jermaine Ifedi, but the Bengals don't stop anybody. Now, if Will Levis is going to throw them the ball, they catch it. If DTR does that, they will catch it, but they are not impressive. Now, I'm hoping that Cedric Tillman will be back this week. I'm hoping that David Njoku will be back this week. Those would certainly be a benefit, specifically Tillman, since he's got, years of chemistry. But yeah, that him succeeding is good for him. It's good for the Browns. And yes, winning does help this team. You don't want to go out and just lose every game because it does carry over into your offseason. It does. You want people to have reason to believe in this. And Myles Garrett and, the veterans that Denzel Ward and all these other guys and the young players, are they going to be happy to get a really good rookie in the first round of the draft? Yeah. Is it better to them than winning 3 games? No. And I'm way more worried about how those guys feel coming out of this, because those are the guys you want to build, but those are your building blocks. That's your core. Yeah. Those guys matter to me, and how they view the situation far more than a couple spots in this draft. If it's quarterback, you could have a different argument, but it's not. So where are we at? Is Mason Graham that good? Maybe, but I'd rather the organization be in a healthier place with 3 more wins or 1 more win than 3 more losses.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, probably the difference between 1 win and not winning is maybe a spot in the draft. So we're not talking about massive movement up and down the board either way on the draft side of things. Question here from Serge, and then I just want to bring up one thing from that last video. But Serge saying, is there anything DTR can do in these last 3 games to make him the starting quarterback or in the starting quarterback conversation in 2025?
Unlikely. Now, a lot of that will depend on who they ultimately get, and we'll get into that part. But look, if DTR goes out and plays well for 3 games, you certainly don't turn around and go, hey, DTR is the starting quarterback. But right. Let's say they sign a Jameis Winston. They stay with Jameis Winston. Maybe they sign a Jacoby Brissett. Maybe they bring Joe Flacco back. Let's talk in that tier of quarterbacks. If that's the conversation, and you have those 2 plus a rookie in camp, I think you can have a little bit more of a competition and open it up a little bit more. Now, there's a finite amount of time before that becomes counterproductive, because at some point you do need to make a decision and get going for the season. But you want DTR to go and ball out to a point that makes you think about it. Now, that should not stop them from acting. And we'll use the Falcons as an example. Yeah. They should do whatever the Browns feel is the best path at quarterback for them under their current circumstances. That is what they should pursue. Don't be like people who bagged on the Falcons and go, well, you got Kirk Cousins, you don't need another quarterback. Well, until you do. And they were smart, they were proactive, and they were super prudent. Obviously, they did not expect to be in this situation. They thought if Penix was going to be thrown into the game like this, it'd be injury, not Kirk Cousins can't play at a high enough levels for them to matter with still a shot at the playoffs. So even if let's say DTR goes out there and throws 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns over these next 3 weeks, he's also shown you an ability. He throws his body around. He is somebody who unfortunately has had really bad luck with injuries since arriving in Cleveland. Now, he always threw his body around at UCLA and occasionally got nicked up and missed some time, but nothing compared to what he's missed in Cleveland. So just from that standpoint, you have to operate it from a depth standpoint. But could he do enough to at least get you thinking that he should get a look to start camp? Maybe. Sure. Now, if you go and get, let's say they sign Sam Darnold, or they trade for Kirk Cousins, or trade for Derek Carr, or somebody in that realm, then no, the answer is probably not. Then those guys are, especially if it's Sam Darnold, the conversation's over at that point. But like that's sort of what that would look like in that scenario. I mean, the bottom line is DTR playing gives you more information in general about DTR, about sort of more about this offense and who can function within it and all that stuff. And it also just gives hopefully DTR healthy, gets the offseason he didn't get to have last year, where he got to work on like getting better at, like Kevin Stefanski sort of laid out about how he got better at sort of handling the operation that quarterbacks coming out of college have a challenge with, because so few teams huddle, that he can do a whole lot of studying coverages and watching film and doing that stuff. But he was limited in what he could do because he was waiting for that hip injury to heal, where hopefully he comes out of this healthy and now he can physically train and build on the stuff with more feedback from playing that he can learn from and take that next step in a third year, which becomes a pivotal year for him. So there's a lot of ways this could go. Do I think it's a reasonable likelihood that DTR is going to go out there and suddenly we're going to be talking about him starting? Probably not. But it would not be nice if he looks like the part of a quality backup quarterback. That would be helpful. So there's value in that.
Sims alluded to Winston not being here next year in that video. You think he does still have a chance, though?
I just wouldn't rule him out. There's reasons why he might not be, and at some point the OBR will probably do talking about what those things are. But listen, the bottom line is you have proof of concept that you can win with Jameis Winston. There is value in that. Now, you can certainly lose with him as well, but in terms of he can operate the offense, he can make Jerry Jeudy and some of these other players look real good. And you can talk yourself into, and let's be clear, any quarterback we mention in this, you're probably going to be talking yourself into in some form or fashion. It's just a matter of how much. But if you're talking yourself into Jameis Winston or a lot of these guys, you're saying they're gonna do a whole lot of work to get the running game better. They're gonna do a lot to improve the run blocking, the offensive line, the running back situation, and they're gonna keep building. Hopefully have a more consistent, reliable defense. Maybe some more weapons in the passing game. Whatever that is, you are saying that the Browns can sort of tone down some of the things that Jameis does wrong because he's not throwing. And I looked this up because it was interesting in thinking about this, comparing to another quarterback who we will get to, and I do not want any part of. He averaged 40 attempts a game in his starts. That's a lot of attempts, and not somewhere we've talked. If the Browns had, if the Browns had Joe Burrow, 40 attempts is probably about right. It's not about right with Jameis Winston. It should be an outlier situation where you're in a game like you are against the Denver Broncos, where you have to throw that many times because that's just the way the game is. But by and large, we'd like to see more ball control, more being able to run the ball, being able to shorten the game, being able to count on your defense to control the game, and not feeling like you have to take as many risks to get the offense going, and not being as predictable, which should hopefully open up more opportunities, both to make plays, but also reduce the amount of times you're now putting the ball at risk. So that's sort of where, like, you can see a path with Jameis Winston. I don't think you love that path, but like, that's why I don't think you can necessarily go, it's definitely not going to be him, because until the Browns have a quarterback, I think all options are on the table.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's a list out there that's kind of circulating, and I think he's on that list of potential guys. Certainly. All right, let's transition here. You're watching the React. That's Pete Smith. I'm Brad Ward. Appreciate you guys being here in the chat. Yeah, you're right. Black Dog, as we've talked about, they have to be able to run the ball no matter who's there next year. And I'm sure that they will, I've written about it. You've written about it. We've both talked about it. That feels like no matter who you're putting in to play quarterback for you in 2025, you have to provide a better circumstances around them in the run game.
Yeah.
Specifically to generate any kind of success, no matter who it is.
Right. Like if the Browns miraculously had the pick of any quarterback in this draft, we'd be saying the same thing. You cannot ask these unless like Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes or one of those type of guys is going somehow walking into Berea and going, I'm here now. Yeah. That has to be the main focus for anyone to have success. I mean, the whole focus this offseason to me is to improve the situation to then get the quarterback you really want to be able to lead this team.
Exactly. Well said. All right. This is a video from 92.3 The Fan. This is kind of wild, but Nick Wilson, Jonathan Pearlin, Nick Wilson going in on the Browns for not being prepared to deal with Deshaun Watson circumstances. I know Pete loves this one. Let's dive in here.
To make me go through 3-11. Show me you actually learned something. Show me that you can take self-scouting. You can self-evaluate and you get better. Because right now, it's like dodgeball.
Nick,
duck, dip, dive, dodge, and dodge.
Nick, the bottom fell out in a way that I don't think anybody expected. That's the reality of it. No one expected Deshaun to be what Deshaun was, and the injury attached to it all. And don't shake your head like that.
But you don't plan for it.
It's not like that.
You don't.
No,
convince,
they put all their
conceive.
eggs into that basket. You want to punish them for that? Sure, you can do that. But they
you
were
don't
convinced.
Conceive failure. That's the problem.
They were convinced this was a Super Bowl roster. I told you that week 5 into the season they were convinced of that. I heard behind the scenes.
They're so convinced in their processes. They don't plan for if it doesn't go right. That's stupid.
Magic.
That's objectively dumb.
In the middle of the season after the injury, there's not some magic button they could have pushed to all of a sudden have them swerve into being competitive.
No, you don't.
That didn't exist.
You don't push that button.
It doesn't exist in the NFL.
You don't push that button in October. Do you know when you do it?
Your starting quarterback goes down. You are up a creek. You're done. That's how the NFL operates all the time.
But do you know? We can't say that and then give them credit for last year then.
It's how it works. That was a complete anomaly. You know that.
Real quick. Let's run it back here. Because what you're just saying there, you don't do that in October. The button that you plan in case of emergency, you plan that in March. And that button that you push.
They got the best backup quarterback in the game to supplement Deshaun Watson. There's not like there's a million quarterbacks that are out there.
The best backup.
Jameis entering the season was the best backup quarterback the game had to offer.
To whom?
What do you mean? To whom?
Could you have drafted a quarterback in the last 2 years, by the way, that wasn't DTR, that wasn't a fifth-round pick?
They drafted DTR.
Okay, but could you not have spent a higher pick this last offseason?
Who were you going to take? Second round, third round?
Well, no.
You're waste one of the few draft picks you have? They don't have first-round picks. They needed second and third-round picks to actually supplement the roster.
Could you have done other things? Could you have foreseen that this wasn't going to...
What quarterback would you have wanted them to have as a backup plan?
Real quick. Could you have done other things than exactly what you did this year?
Name me the backup you would have gotten. Jameis was the best backup quarterback you could have had in this roster.
We'll do that.
Especially when you're already paying $70 million to Deshaun Watson.
Okay. I cannot imagine listening to that for 4 hours a day. I don't know how people do it. I could barely get through that. All right. So let's start with this. People were mad that the Browns didn't sign Joe Flacco. Jameis Winston has been everything that Joe Flacco was and would have been if Joe Flacco was still here. And he's younger and has done more, whatever. Like Joe Flacco here would be basically what we got Jameis. It might look a little bit different, but ultimately result in the same thing. And yet the Browns were killed for not re-signing Joe Flacco. Jameis Winston has been everything that you would have wanted. Now, to the other point, or one of the many other stupid points, the Browns could have drafted a quarterback this last year. That's interesting. I had to look this up for somebody asking something on the forums. By the way, subscribe. You can ask questions in our forums that I can be forced to look up these things. 6 quarterbacks went in the top 12 picks or whatever Bo Nix was picked. The next quarterback didn't go until round 5. Yep. It's Spencer Rattler. And then it's the quarterbacks after that. And this is where I'm talking about. I thought Spencer Rattler was a nice prospect. I basically, answering this person's question, basically had him and DTR relatively even in what I thought of them as prospects. Yeah. So you're basically at the same thing. There's no second round guy. The Browns didn't pick until they took Mike Hall at 50, whatever it was. So no, the answer is literally you could not have drafted another quarterback because you could not trade up to get what would have been Bo Nix. So no, flat out, you could not. You could have gotten it Spencer Rattler or Michael Pratt. Spencer Rattler has played for the Saints and struggled. He's a rookie. Of course he has. So no. So to say that invalidates the decision to sign Jameis Winston is idiotic. They did plan. This was the reason. And the reason they planned was because they had to learn from 2023 where they got really lucky because they did not plan as well. They were all in on Deshaun and they had Josh Dobbs and, those type of guys. Ultimately, they, traded
away Dobbs. Yeah.
Yeah. Traded away Josh Dobbs, which they got panned for, proven to be right. And then there's no way to get around it. They lucked into the Joe Flacco situation. That's luck. That does not take away from what they were able to accomplish last season because they filled in a whole lot of holes. And they did things like draft DeJuan Jones, who was able to come in and be a hero. They were able to draft a number of guys who were able to step in and play immediately. They were able to sign a number of guys who were step in and really big contributions. So the idea that invalidates. Now, and I keep seeing these clips from these two, and I don't know why we can't, this whole argument comes around this idea that Kevin Stefanski is Teflon and doesn't get blamed for whatever. He's 3-11. He has to own that. The question then becomes, does that invalidate everything else he's doing? And once you've answered that question, what do you want to do instead? It certainly feels like that Nick Wilson wants – I'm not going to put words in his mouth. It feels to me, based on the conversation he keeps having with national pundits, he wants to fire Kevin Stefanski. I don't know why, but he's very angry at this situation and wants to fire Kevin Stefanski, where the other dude, Peterlin, is overprotecting Kevin Stefanski in a way that I feel is unnecessary. Kevin Stefanski, I think, is an excellent coach, but he can also own – being 3-11, it's not going to kill him. And I think part of the problem we get into with this is we are so protective of some people are so protective of whether it's Kevin Stefanski or Andrew Berry. We are unwilling to acknowledge failures that they've had because then that opens the door to, they did this, so now we have to fire them. We can never have. Well, we can't just say 3-11. It's not good enough. This was a terrible season. They need to do better next year. And just leave it at that and say, this is, even if Kevin Stefanski could have coached his ass off this year, he could have the best coaching season of his life relative to individual players or, organizing his coaches, all that stuff. But you still have to own 3-11. So he could be great at all of these things. And you still have to eat the fact that you're 3-11. And I don't think he would run away from that. But and this is why, it feels, for the sake of their show, they've got to go another at least 3 weeks going back and forth like this. So maybe I'm ruining all their content by just saying, just admit that, just say, Kevin Stefanski has to own this season, but I believe he should be here next season. And that should be the end of it. Because that's where I'm at. I don't like being 3-11. It's not fun. People get mad at me because I'm not angry about it because I've already made peace with what this season is. But I sit here going, oh man, 3-11 is really fun and a great time. This is the season I envisioned. But so I'm past that. Now it's how do they get back to being better? How do they be competitive? And for whatever reason, and it's not limited to them. I see it all over, particularly sports talk radio. And I suppose that's sort of the beast that it is. Getting angrier and angrier when the Browns are so far out of it that it doesn't matter. And
it doesn't matter.
I don't think they're going to be less angry if the Browns win these all the remaining games. So it's just a very weird conversation. But just the stuff Nick Wilson spouting off there is just flat wrong on any number of levels. The stuff Peter Lynn's arguing is 100% right. But just cut through the crap and just say, listen, man, this has not been a good year. And hopefully next year's better. It needs to be better next year.
Yeah, there's no, and it's like this really anywhere you look or this conversation is going on, unfortunately, because the topic is so polarizing and people are upset to great degrees, which they have a right to be. But there's no middle ground, right? There's no rational ground in the middle. It's either, they're 3-11. It's not good enough, and they need to all go and let's blow it up, or or Stefanski's the best, greatest coach ever. He can do no wrong. There's no middle ground. No, clearly they failed. This year they made some mistakes, but he still is your best option moving forward, in my opinion, that's available to you. So it's about, there has to be some kind of a middle ground or like, just like rational, like it doesn't have to be. Other good coaches have had losing seasons before. You're not going to always be great in the NFL. It's just the way the league is set up generally.
There's this mystical notion of accountability, and I don't know what this needs to look like for people. Like, you have a bad season, and it's the only answer most people have is firing him. But like, so what is the answer short of that? Does he get flogged in town square? Does he have a digit chopped off? Like, that's the problem, is like, there's this feeling that, like, because you haven't done anything to him, that somehow he's gotten away with something.
Yes.
And not realizing that, like, if that he has to eat that, like, he has to go through this all the time. Like,
he hates this. You can.
I don't want to get into an Ohio State debate, but like, Ryan Day tells you that, like, losing to Michigan ruins his life.
Yeah,
I believe him 100%.
Oh yeah,
losing eats at you in a way that people don't understand at this, and it's tough. Like, somebody I don't remember, somebody reminded me of, like, the Syracuse guy who refuses to shower after they lose.
Yeah.
Like, somebody can't wash the stink off. It's like, dude, I don't think the Browns have the Syracuse policy. So the mythical notion of accountability bothers me. I don't like it with players either. I think there is a point, but I think playing time is more of an accountability thing than necessarily cutting him. And I said at the time, I wasn't going to shed a tear for Kadarius Toney being waived, but, like, I also saw what value he potentially had, and then they waive him, and there's this they did the justified action, and then James Prochet immediately muffs a punt. Like, when you start walking guys off the plank, you start running out of people to do that with, and you don't get anywhere. So at some point, you either got to, again, playing time, and yes, you can cut guys and all that stuff, but ultimately you've got to find a way to make guys get better and get through it. That doesn't just involve some very short-lived feeling of a relief that they fired this, that, like, somehow that's going to change anything.
Yeah. Totally agree. And well said. All right. Let's get into a little bit here, the Kirk Cousins stuff. As this is from Get Up. And just talking about what's going on with Cousins, and that'll lead us into some more conversations surrounding the quarterback position, as that has kind of been the hot button topic late in the week here. And I think it's worth addressing. As I know you have addressed it in written form, which you should read for sure over at the OBR. As have Jack Duffin today, with a terrific job on covering exactly how the Browns can handle Watson moving forward, and so on and so forth. So go check that stuff out at theobr.com. But here is this is from on the benching of Cousins for Penix Jr. Michael.
These guys are here too. We back. Big news last night while you were sleeping. Enormous quarterback news from Atlanta. Michael Penix Jr. is the new starting quarterback for the Falcons. Kirk Cousins to the bench. This announced by Coach Raheem Morris last night. Cousins, 9 picks, 1 touchdown pass across his past 5 games. You remember Penix, he led Washington to the national championship game last season. Falcons stunned the world by taking him number 8 overall in the draft. And you may say to yourself, well, why was the world so stunned? Lest you forget, that came after the Falcons on March 11th had signed Kirk Cousins, a 36-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury, to a 4-year, $180 million contract with $100 million guaranteed. If they release him,
got a great agent.
If they release him after this and he does not play for them again, they will have paid him $90 million to play 14 games. This is the franchise that decided at the last moment they didn't need Bill Belichick's help. I will keep coming back to that. Come on, this is an abject.
There's so many different ways to go. And he managed to. Hey, he just bulldozed right over everything. Michael Penix, young kid, getting his first chance. Kirk Cousins, Achilles recovering. You know what? You know what have fixed all of that? Bill Belichick.
Well, because here's the problem. I hear people. Thank goodness. Look how genius it was that they took Penix. After all, they knew what they were doing. They paid the man $100 million guaranteed dollars. And so now you're going to try and tell me, oh, well, this was actually great foresight by the Falcons to have a succession plan.
Well, listen, you can either make a mistake or you can actually get a solution. Like, this move could save their season. So credit to them for at least doing it, getting the insurance policy so that they're in this position, they have somebody to turn to. Does it make up for the contract? No.
Yeah.
But at least they have somewhere to go now.
And I can honestly say, I don't know, and this is no joke. I've played 14 years. I've watched football my entire life. I don't think I've ever seen a player fall off a cliff. The first 9 games to what he's done in these past 5, honestly, I've never seen it tank this bad. And he looks dejected. He looks confused, which you would not think about a guy who's played. He looks like he has no confidence in any. I mean, it's like the last shot of a Roman candle when he thinks, I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, but you look at, he looks like everything. He has a string attached to everything. He wants to pull it back as soon as he throws it. I've never seen Kirk Cousins look this way. I think it left Raheem Morris no other option, which is disappointing because Atlanta still has a chance of having a home playoff game, which is monumental. But I'm telling you, whatever's going on with Kirk Cousins, I have not seen it before, and it's shocking to me in all honesty.
And I'm still trying to qualify whether or not it is because of the Achilles, because he's trying to navigate coming back from that, not being at full strength. The only adjective that you can give Kirk Cousins, the only one you can't give him at this point is underpaid. Like everything else hits because.
All right, so they made this decision to go to Penix, and you know, listen, I'm not gonna lie, and I want to hear your reaction to this. Like, I think that their approach, not the contract so much, but their approach to the quarterback position was sound, and one that I would like the Browns to kind of similarly maybe approach this year. It doesn't have to be an $180 million contract, but journeyman, whatever your option, you feel your best option is veteran-wise. But I'd also like them to draft a quarterback as well, and so that you do have multiple. We've talked about this. You have to have multiple swings at this thing for it to work out. I also would just put out there that yes, he's recovering from an Achilles, but they also don't really run what he has thrived in the past. Like, he kind of thrived in Stefanski's offense in play action heavy stuff. They don't really do a lot of play action. They don't. I think somebody read off they had the lowest play action. I'm not saying that's the reason he's playing poorly now. I'm just saying that maybe they haven't put him in the best position to succeed. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, again, I agree with the assessment that the contract was not good, but it's prudent to take as many swings as possible for this exact reason.
Yes.
Because you just don't know. Now, Penix may fail also, but they've at least given themselves that opportunity. And yes, I agree the Browns should do that. What does that look like? You know, in terms of which quarterbacks, that gets a little bit dicier. And ultimately, I'm not going to pick a quarterback I don't believe in. But yeah, I would like to get a veteran, a rookie, and take a rookie every year and keep cycling through. Having watched that game, I don't blame them at all for making the move they did. I would say, and I said this at the beginning of the year in our Slack and all this, he said he wasn't fully recovered from the Achilles when they started. And I watched him play against the Steelers, and he was a sitting duck. They knew where he was going to be every play, and he was just waiting to get killed. And that's a huge deal. So you have to now figure out, now having been this far from the Achilles, and I don't think it's gotten better in terms of him being a sitting duck, is he going to get better from that Achilles in a way that's going to now give him some mobility back so he can do some of the play action stuff, that they can do some of moving the pocket, so that you play the TJ Watts of the world, which is what happened in that game. They knew exactly where he was going to be all the time, and they could overwhelm them. And the Falcons were absolutely dismantled. It puts a lot more pressure on the offensive line. It puts them in a disadvantage because there's only so much you can do. And when the quarterback's going to be basically in the pocket every time, you can just send more guys than they have, particularly the A and B gaps, and you may get a guy coming home free super fast who's going to deck him just about every time. So there's a lot of risk with that. Now, obviously, because the Falcons have made this move, the natural transition is, well, are the Browns going to trade for him? Because they are the easiest projection to make in terms of making a trade. Kirk Cousins and Kevin Stefanski go back to Minnesota. Kevin Stefanski was the offensive coordinator for Kirk Cousins, the only game he's ever won in the playoffs, when they won the wild card on the road against the Saints. Then Kevin Stefanski took the job in Cleveland. But that's Kirk Cousins' only playoff win. What I would sort of introduce as sort of the variable here is, if you believe that Kirk Cousins can recover in a way that's going to be prudent, there's a couple things that play out here. First, the Falcons have no leverage at all. And the reason they have no leverage is because you saw how Kirk Cousins has been playing this year. And he has a no trade clause. So he can make things, he can pick his destination. And I'd be very surprised if the Browns would have to give up more than like a sixth to get Kirk Cousins at this point, because the Falcons have nowhere to go with this. They have to eat it, and they don't want to have to cut him. That is the nightmare scenario for them, because then they would have to eat $90 million as opposed to 65. That's a decent amount of incentive for them to take what they can get and move on. That would leave the Browns in a situation where Kirk Cousins would be on a $27.5 million guaranteed salary for this year. The Browns would restructure some of that. I think it's $6.5 million would be taken off at the top of that and put into a void year or signing bonus later on, whatever. And then you drop that number down to 20. The Browns can do that and be fine. Then you have 2 more years left on the contract. Each year has $35 million. Neither is guaranteed, but there's a roster bonus in addition to that, where March 17th of each year, he would get $10 million. So
yeah,
that would guarantee that either that deal is going to be restructured or Kirk Cousins is going to be cut or traded. I guess theoretically he could be traded, but let's be honest, cut. So in that scenario, the Browns would get 1 year of a veteran who has played good football at points for $27.5 million. And ultimately they would, when he's gone, there'd be like the $6.5 million void year or whatever that they'd have to account for, but they can do that and be fine and gain cap room and all that stuff because they've done that with everybody else. But like, that would be the end of it. There would be no more after that in terms of like, we're not dealing with Kirk Cousins money into, 2027, like the Browns will be doing with Deshaun Watson. Yeah. So there's a value in that. Where I think things get interesting is, again, if you believe that Kirk Cousins can bounce back from the Achilles, that he can come to a place like Cleveland, a coach he's played for, play in a system that can fit around him well, you look at the numbers he had in 2023 with Minnesota, they're fabulous. with a weaker running game than they have this year, and very comparable to what Sam Darnold is putting up this year. So that is either a cautionary tale for both of them, that leaving Minnesota, leaving Justin Jefferson, leaving Kevin O'Connell, leaving that offensive line, leaving what is a very the setup the Browns need to develop for their future, a very good offense that you can literally plug and play, which is what Atlanta thought they were going to be, but have not been. That Minnesota is the dream scenario for any quarterback to sort of be dropped into and go play good football. You can believe that either this is a cautionary tale, that Kirk Cousins is a warning sign for don't touch Sam Darnold, because he's going to, I don't think, revert quite as badly or regress quite as badly as Kirk Cousins did, but will regress in a way that will not be worth what you are paying him. Or you can talk yourself into the idea that Kirk Cousins can then bounce back and get at least reasonably close to what he was able to do in 2023, which was very good football. And if we go off those numbers, that everybody would be more than happy to have that as the bridge quarterback.
Yeah.
That is sort of where you get in this weird conversation. And I don't know the answer.
Well, what do you say to the idea that the first 9 games this year, he did play well?
I don't know about if I'd use the word well. It wasn't as, I would just say it's not as
stark.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I would just say the last 5 games were particularly bad. I don't think the first 9 games were great either.
Okay.
It just has not worked for whatever reason. So that's an element that's just, I think, however you want to chalk that up. How much you want to chalk that up to the Achilles? How much you want to chalk that up to the limitations that presented toward the rest of the offense? How much you want to put on the offense? Are the Falcons lying to themselves about the weapons they have? I don't know the answer to these questions, and this is ultimately what the Browns, or I can't think of another team that would be in this market. That's part of the reason I think the Browns would only have to give up like one of their 15 6th-round picks to get him. I don't see another fit.
If he gets cut, because
the dream scenario. This is the dream. Yes. Kirk Cousins says, "Screw you guys, cut me." That's the greatest thing ever. Because he would then probably do the Russell Wilson deal and sign for the league minimum.
Deal.
Beautiful.
Offset language.
Like, yes.
The Browns get him for nothing.
Yes.
It's like the Russell Wilson thing all over again. And that would be the dream bailout, right? For the Browns.
Oh, yeah, 100%. That's the dream scenario, that you are now basically playing Deshaun Watson and Kirk Cousins a combined like $47 million as opposed to the 46 that you're just paying Deshaun Watson. Yeah, that's the dream scenario. Now, how likely is that? I don't think very likely, but you never know. I don't know how vengeful Kirk Cousins is. I will say he and his agent are phenomenal in terms of he has gotten every penny possible. So if there's a way for him to get more money or to sort of work this in a way that works out in his benefit, chances are he will do that. But that seems really unlikely. But like, and as I say all this is why I'm saying that whether it's Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, whoever, everything else becomes so critical. Improving the offensive line, being able to run the ball, those type of things, to be able to take as much pressure off of him, being able to play good defense, because that's part of what the Falcons have been able to do. I don't think they're a great defense by any stretch, but they've been able to keep themselves in games where they don't score a lot of points and figure it out. Now, there have been a couple of games where Kirk Cousins has genuinely been really good in those early 9 games, and you're like, okay, there's the real Kirk Cousins, or whatever you want to, however you want to describe it. So I don't get excited about Kirk Cousins. I really liked him coming out of college, but I always thought he was going to be sort of a 15 to 20 type starting quarterback, which is, I think, what he is. Now, there have been times where he's gotten sort of in that top 12 range, but he is always the guy I've looked at who's going to break your heart when you need him the most. A guy who needs to have a clean, like, part of the problem is Kirk Cousins, and what I'm seeing from him in Atlanta is what I saw from him in Minnesota and Washington. When things are going smoothly and he's got good protection, he can sort of operate on time and do things. He's great. Yeah. When he's feeling a lot of pressure, he shrivels up. And you've seen this when the Browns have played against Kirk Cousins in the past, where he just shriveled up and sort of just could not operate. So, but if you're telling me that that's what I could get that sort of level of play where he's going to win the games he should win, not kill you in those games, but he's not going to, get you playoff victories. Okay, that's a problem I can live with for a year is trying to get through to where you need to get going. Now, but I can't say with confidence that that's what the Browns would get. They will have to figure that out. And then the other thing that's sort of interesting about this is because there's a trade involved, and I suspect the Browns will have a good feel about where they're at in terms of how the market will shake out in February at the combine. They will sort of figure these things out. That it also then allows you to sort of explore free agency, see what that landscape looks like if it's Sam Darnold or somebody else you really like, and then you can quickly pivot and go, okay, Falcons, let's get this done. Like I think in some ways he becomes the backup plan, and not even necessarily a backup plan, but just your fallback option if you don't like what everything else is doing. Like you could theoretically focus, if you don't like a quarterback or whatever early in those first couple of days of the free agency period, you could try to get those other things you want to get lined up and then bring in Kirk Cousins or something along those lines. So there's a couple different dynamics at play. I would definitely put this in the maybe category of options and probably one of the likelier scenarios. Sure. Unless everybody just determines that Kirk Cousins' legs are just gone. Possible he's 36, but all these people are telling me how he's ancient at 36 are mad that the Browns didn't sign Joe Flacco. So you got to make up your mind on this one. I get it. Achilles is a serious injury. This is why I keep telling people it's going to take Deshaun quite a while. We'll see. I hope for Kirk Cousins' sake, he's fueled by rage and revenge and spite and everything else. And whatever his family vacations are right at the offseason are going to be involve him just training and making his family watch.
At the very least, this week, though, created kind of a scenario with them. I mean, like I heard somebody talking about this, and I can't reference it right now, but like it was like Raheem Morris really had to take this move incredibly seriously because once you go to it, there's no going back, really.
Maybe
you agree with that?
I always think that stuff's overblown.
Okay.
I think he's gone after the season regardless. I just don't think it's practical for them anymore. But if you're telling me,
that's what I mean.
If you're telling, from that standpoint, I absolutely agree. If you're telling me that Michael Penix goes out and stinks the joint out, and the Falcons are still in position to make the playoffs or they get into the playoffs and Michael Penix just isn't doing it for them, I think they can go back to Kirk Cousins this year. After this year, it's over. They're gone. And it's impractical from a financial standpoint. They're going to want to get out of that money. They're off that contract as fast as possible. They're not going to want to pay $45 million to a backup.
Yeah. That's kind of that's the idea there is that, after this year, they're moving on at this point. And, that does generate for the Browns that maybe you can look at it as like kind of a little bit of a safety net potentially if they want to situate things that way. Right. So it becomes interesting, that scenario if you think that he can still play. You have mentioned it doesn't excite you, right? But
none of the options out there excite me. There's no option that is going to be like, yes, I love this option. And frankly, I think that's the approach. I think you and I both think the Browns have to look at this as we collectively as a sort of group of onlookers have to set our expectations, not low necessarily, but reasonable, and hope that whoever they get overachieves in the way that we've seen Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett, and some of these other guys, but that whoever you get, it's all about building up the rest of the team around them to take off as much pressure as possible.
And I would argue it's Stefanski's biggest case for being retained at this point is the success he's had with quarterbacks not named Deshaun Watson prior to this.
Agreed. Yeah, he's fantastic, and that's one of the other things where, even as I say, Kevin O'Connell's crushing it as far as like offensive design and play calling. I think Kevin Stefanski's fantastic. So that sort of mitigates a little bit of my concern that, getting either Darnold or Cousins would be necessarily a regression from that standpoint. Now, having said that, particularly Darnold likes to throw to Justin Jefferson a whole lot. And I love Jerry Jeudy. I love what he's doing right now. He's not Justin Jefferson. And that's a challenge. Now, there are other things they could do around that. They could, if they go that route and let's say the Browns win a game or just the draft falls a certain way and they go, hey, King Tet or Luther Burden III. And we go, hey, we're going to just keep adding weapons and get more of these guys. I don't think too many people would be upset at that situation either.
No, totally agree. All right. So on the same topic here, this is from this morning. This is Ken and Lima on 92.3, The Fan, talking about this very situation. Cousins versus, in this case, Justin Fields.
Bring him in. Guys, I didn't see the forest for the trees. I didn't know how dire straits we were in. I was still operating under the guise that there was a way to not pull the nose up on the current quarterback situation, I guess, but there was like some sort of movability. Yeah, when you're telling me Kirk Cousins, I think that kind of goes, oh, we are at the bottom of the barrel here, aren't we? We reached rock bottom. So if you're giving me Kirk Cousins with live Owens, are you laughing? Or are you agreeing with me? If you're giving me Kirk Cousins or Justin Fields, guys, I'll leave right now. I'll do the rest of the show from the phone, and I'll drive to go get Justin Fields.
What do you think what's the floor and the ceiling for a Justin Fields?
The floor is, honestly, the floor is what he's doing in Pittsburgh. The ceiling is a guy who finally gets it and is an electrifying quarterback that we can talk about giving a contract to. Wow. And I'm not talking a franchise, like something like Baker Mayfield signed in Tampa, 3 years, $100 million. If Dorian Thompson-Robinson, think about this, if he plays well this Sunday, people might just want to make Dorian the starter, right? If he plays well over the next 3 games, could you go, hey, I got a better version of Dorian Thompson-Robinson over there in Pittsburgh. His name's Justin Fields. Let's give him a shot. And a hush came over the room. I'm open to anything.
Well,
3 and 11.
That's like we're choosing between bad options. We can admit that, right?
Yeah. We're choosing.
I mean, if he was a good option, Justin Fields would be a starting quarterback in this league.
We are in a position we'd rather not be in, but we're trying to make the best of the tough situation here. Is what we're trying to do, Tone. So if Dorian Thompson-Robinson,
I don't know about the Fields thing, Pete. The chat likes Fields. I know that we disagree here. Here it comes. All the love for Fields that they want, and I don't know if it's an Ohio State thing or they just.
It's an Ohio State thing. It's an Ohio State thing. It's an Ohio State thing. Oh, let's start here. Justin Fields is terrible right now. He's terrible at doing the things the Browns would be asking him to do. He was better in Chicago last year in Chicago than he has been with the Steelers this year. The difference is the Steelers have a phenomenal defense. They run the ball better, and they don't ask him to do as much. But he was better with the Bears. He does not play anything like Dorian Thompson-Robinson, other than the fact they are black and they are both fast and they both have strong arms. They do not play remotely the same style of football. Justin Fields is effectively blind reading the field right now.
Yes.
He will read one thing and then just run around. And that's fine in a world where the Browns have a good running game. And in some ways, he can enhance your running game by virtue of that, by virtue of adding the ability to read and run. But he does not read defense as well. He just throws crap up. You think Jameis just throws crap up. Justin Fields will just do random stuff that makes no sense. And then he will also fumble the ball at a high rate. He's terrible. And I loved him coming out of college. I loved him coming out of Ohio State. I thought he was going to be great. And he has gotten worse. over the course of his time in the NFL. And I'm not saying he can't. I'm not going to tell you he cannot figure it out. But I'm telling you he should not be in consideration for the Browns at this point. I do not think he's going to give you, if he's going to get a $10 to $11 million contract as PFF is projecting, I have no interest in this arrangement at all.
No.
I want somebody who can come in and actually play football. Like, I think Russell Wilson has been phenomenal for the Steelers relative to expectations and everything else. But like that, Russell Wilson is not like Pro Bowl quarterback stuff this year. He's doing well, but like it's night and day for them compared to what Fields was doing on that team right now. Dorian Thompson-Robinson can read the field. Dorian Thompson, we see the interception. I'm going to grant you, yes, they come in bunches and all this other stuff. But I see him look at the field and read things way better than I do just Fields. I'm not going to tell you I have high hopes for Dorian Thompson-Robinson proving he's a starter or anything along the lines. But that's not the expectation. The expectation is that Dorian Thompson-Robinson is hopefully going to prove that he can be a good backup. You need Justin Fields to start for you. He's not going to be able to do it in a way that's going to be effective for you. He does not fit what the Browns want to do. You could have a passing interest and go, I want to toy around with this guy and see if I can get something out of him in a world where you thought Deshaun Watson was going to be good and he's a backup. But like, if you were forced to play him, I'd rather have a quarterback. If understanding the circumstances that we've laid out, the Browns have to get way better at running the football, way better, more consistent playing defense, just get better at everything else on the football team to accommodate any of these guys. But given the choice between maybe redeemable project that can eventually figure something out, who is just going to largely run around and do those type of things, versus guy who can operate from the pocket and throw the ball to weapons that the Browns real weapons.
Yeah.
I want him to throw the ball.
Yes.
He was horrendous with DJ Moore. He had a great receiver in Chicago and made him look horrible. Absolutely not interested in of all the guys you can put on the list. Give me Jacoby Brissett.
I would go with
Jacoby Brissett
Jameis
right now over what Justin Fields does. And again, I hope Justin Fields goes to a situation, and it might be Pittsburgh, where you just get to sit. Maybe you're a package player and you develop, and maybe he will come out on the other end and do what Sam Darnold is doing right now somewhere at some point. But if you're the Browns, you cannot tell me you are betting on that in a season where you are saying we need to win football games, because he doesn't do that.
No,
he does not win football games. His team, he plays on a team, and the team either is going to win and he's on it, or they're going to lose because of him. He's not winning you any football games. I suppose you can make the argument that none of these guys are necessarily winning you football games, but I just do not want to. I'm not going to believe in this delusion. And I think what will happen, what I would envision happening with Justin Fields in about 2 to 3 games, people would absolutely hate him because of the stuff he does. He's a lot of fun when you are watching him on somebody else's team, and you get to watch the clips and him do all these wonderful things.
Yeah.
But when he does stupid things, like watch him against the Browns, there were plays where he would, they ran those keeper things on 4th down. He would go the complete opposite way that the blocking was. He just do his own thing. It was awful to watch, and the Browns killed him. Yeah. And then and I didn't even hate this play call, but when Arthur Smith called him in and had him chuck it down the field, they got panned for it. They got panned for having a quarterback throw. No, I'm not interested. I wish him all the luck in the world. I just do not think it's a good idea in Cleveland.
For me, he's a project that I don't have time for.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's how I would look at it. I would rather take Jameis. I would rather take any Jacoby, the options that because they can at least sit in the pocket and give you a chance right now, and he can't do that for you. But yeah, it's interesting. All right, so so what do the Browns do at quarterback? What is the ideal scenario? We're going to go to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, which first we're going to get their thoughts on playing. This was before it was announced that DTR would start, just to kind of look at the thought process here. But is there a guy like, I think you need to draft a guy. I think you need a veteran. You have to see how this Cousins thing's played out. I know I have written about Sam Darnold. I think it's probably a little bit of a pipe dream. I wish they could do it. But it feels it's desperate, right? It would be a desperate money. Here's my thing is I just don't know if somebody posted in our Slack what kind of contract they thought he was going to get, right? Or the
I posted the PFF projection. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if that kind of market is going to develop for him, Pete.
I see one team that is willing to lay a whole lot of money out for him. That's Tennessee.
Okay.
Will Levis. I mean, they're benching Will Levis at this point. They're going with Mason Rudolph. They're not in a position to draft a quarterback high. I mean, that's the other thing that, at least right now, obviously things could change, but Drew Aller has broken everybody's heart by saying he's going back to school.
Yeah.
So unless Tennessee's like, and Jalen Milroe has not, to my knowledge, made a decision one way or the other. Unless Tennessee's enamored with Jalen Milroe, they got to do something. They've got more money, I think, to operate with in that scenario. That's where, and I think if Brian Callahan doesn't start turning this thing around, they're going to be in a world of hurt. I don't know how long they can sit there and just suck with no end in sight. Part of the reason Brian Callahan was brought in was to theoretically address an area that Mike Vrabel struggled with, which is quarterback. So if it's not Will Levis, I can't imagine it's going to be Mason Rudolph. Who is it? So it stands to reason to me that they're going to be the biggest player for Sam Darnold. He's 28. I mean, there's a world where he can be very good for a while, win football games and do this and that and the other thing. And I think that stands out to me as their biggest competitor for that. Now, the argument you make from a Browns standpoint is Sam Darnold loves, obviously there's connection between Minnesota and Cleveland with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and Adrian Berry and all that stuff. There's still people there who know Kevin Stefanski, and maybe they're saying, hey, this would be a great fit for you. And the Browns talked to Sam Darnold, and he's like, I love this. I love this fit. I love what the offense wants to do. And that is more appealing to me than Tennessee, where I feel like I'm going to go somewhere and they're just going to suck. That to me is the most that's the scenario where I could see something happening like that. But you still have to make the money work, and you still have to basically say, we're good at quarterback for a while. And I don't know that the Browns are willing to do that. And also, if you sign Sam Darnold, then obviously they can do some things to move the money around and all that in terms of where it hits and, all that stuff. It then limits their ability to do other things. Right. And obviously, with so much of this being about, fixing the rest of the team, building up the rest of the team, even if you love what Kevin Stefanski can do, even if you love Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, Cedric Tillman, all these guys, you can clearly point to Minnesota and say they have a better supporting cast for a quarterback and that there's a downgrade there. And how are the Browns going to make up that difference? And that's sort of the question. And I'm very curious. Ultimately, Jack Duffin will eventually write about, what it would look like if the Browns were to sign Darnold and how that would impact everything else. But rest assured, they can do it. It's just a question of what would it take off the table for them? What would that cost them? But like, if Sam Darnold is trying to maximize his earning power above all else, it's Tennessee. I cannot imagine the Browns would outbid them for Sam Darnold's services. And maybe there's another scenario I'm not accounting for that makes a lot of sense. If Matt Stafford were to retire, even though he's playing well, he's just decided my body's had enough. I'm done. There's a world where he'd go to the Rams and thrive. There's those type of things. But in general, I don't know who else stands out to me as much as Tennessee does. They're just in a really awkward spot. Just like the Browns are, they picked a very weird year to have 3 wins or whatever the Titans have. I think they have 3, and be this far from the top of the draft in a class that seemingly is going to have 2 guys go at the top. So again, maybe they love if Jalen Milroe comes out, maybe they'll love Jalen Milroe. If Drew Allard changes his mind, maybe they'll love Drew Allard. I don't think he's going to change his mind, but if not for those things, I don't know where else the Titans can go.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. So let's look at this, because I wrote, if they really feel the pressure, which I think they certainly are, they may have to get aggressive with Darnold or through the draft. You're saying in the draft there's 2 guys, right? Basically.
Well, that's the consensus. I'm not sure I agree with
Ward and Shedeur.
The consensus on the top one.
Yeah.
I like Cam Ward more than I guess some people do. There are a few of us who really like what Cam Ward can offer. I'm not a Shedeur guy.
Right.
And I should specify, I'm not a Shedeur guy in Cleveland. I think he has a much better shot of being very successful in Las Vegas, because he's in a dome for, what would it be, 9, at least 9, 10 games a year.
Yeah.
I worry a lot about his arm, his body, all those things surviving in January in this division. And even though the Browns put a date on it today, interestingly enough, in that video they released, 2029, I don't think the Browns can wait that long for Shedeur to be effective in a world where they have a dome. So I think he can be successful. I just have significant doubts that it could happen in the AFC North, in Cleveland. Whereas I think Cam Ward can be successful. And then after that, Drew Allard is very talented, and I think you'd have to overdraft him if he were in this class anyway. Like, you probably have to use that top 10 pick on him, is my guess. Or Jalen Milroe, if you like those. But after that, there are some guys that are interesting, but not as many as I think some people like in this class. I haven't watched enough of him, but Jackson Dart is interesting. There's a couple other guys that are interesting, but I don't know that any of them are I don't see anyone who's going to save you now. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. It just puts, as you know how I feel about it, it just puts them in a really tough spot. The Kevin and Barry.
Maybe. I mean, that's the thing. We say that, but and you're not wrong in terms of the quarterback situation is not what you want it to be. But we saw this team win 11 games with a couple from Deshaun Watson, PJ Walker with 2 game-winning drives, with DTR with a game-winning drive, with Joe Flacco off the couch. All that stuff happened. Is that a reliable model to work from? Clearly, no. But for starters, I don't know that you need to win 11. And secondly, it's so much of that about that is, and that's with no running game last year to speak of. If they can improve the other things, they can carry them. I mean, looking at the Steelers as a model, clearly they, I think Russell Wilson has been good. I don't know how you categorize him in terms of where you'd put him in the league, but they're leading the AFC North with a quarterback who's nowhere near as good as Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and those guys. He's nowhere near that echelon. So it can be done. The Browns have done it. So yes, it's not where they want to be in terms of quarterback, clearly, but this team has been very resilient at points. Obviously, last year they were super resilient. And then if they can build off the development of young players they're getting, this year's just been a disaster. But if they can build off of one, get healthy and build off of the development we were seeing from young players, sort of the bright spot of this whole thing, as much as the NFL plays too many games, and they do, and the risk of injury and all those things, we are seeing some guys right before our eyes get better, make plays, and look like they can be really good next year, or good next year, part of a better overall product. So, on some level, it's certainly distressing to look at this quarterback situation and go, man, we're picking from, this bucket, but I think they can make significant improvements that can reduce the workload and make them be successful. And we've seen it. 2023, we've seen it. The Jacoby Brissett year wasn't great in terms of record. I think it was 7-10 or whatever. But I think if you do that type of year, 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, somewhere in that neighborhood, I would be shocked if they were then to fire them, because again, you're still living in the shadow of the Deshaun Watson thing, and you are hopefully in a position now where you can go take that shot to go get that quarterback you want.
Yeah, so that's my question though. So say you do that, right? Like say you pull that off. Say you go 8-9 with Jameis and DTR and an improved run game and you whatever. How are you getting the quarterback going into 2026?
So that's where it's going to be interesting. Obviously, you might end up in a situation where we'll see what the quarterback class looks like. Obviously, in that scenario, potentially both Olar and Milroe would be in there. There's a bunch of underclassmen quarterbacks with a ton of hype that sort of need to continue to put it together. The kid from Tennessee, there's a couple other in that bucket of really talented quarterbacks. But that's where you get into, you might do a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen style trade up, not a Trey Lance trade up, or not a Deshaun Watson style trade to go get a targeted a guy you really like. Now, or you end up in a similar circumstance where it just doesn't work for you, and you are then repeating the same cycle, building up the team. Hopefully then you're even better. Obviously, that would be the dream in that scenario, and continuing to put yourself in a position. But as we've talked about, you're taking a swing every year. And if you get lucky, great. If you find your Brock Purdy, for example, you're in a great situation. But you need to keep taking those swings. You need to keep trying to add arms and seeing if something works. But you've got to identify the guy you want and make the play for him in a way that's not going to, like I said, Trey Lance is the ultimate example. Don't do that. But if you can, yes, it's expensive to go up and get a Josh Allen. It's expensive to go up and get one of these other guys. But we also see quarterbacks who go lower than they should that then work out. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's a good example. Jalen Hurts is a good example. There's certainly no shortage of quarterbacks that also are not picked in the top half of the first round that, for whatever reason, fall, and partly because you've set up an infrastructure and a support system in terms of talent, in terms of coaching staff, and all these things, that it then propels that guy's success, which is part of the reason that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have been successful. They were put into good situations with consistency in terms of coaching staff, in terms of talent, all these things. That is such a huge part of the whole getting quarterback right, is putting them in a positive situation.
I would also say that if the Browns Stefanski and Barry were able to draft well in this draft, right? Have a good draft, good free agency, get around 500, do that. You're also going into now we're talking about them going into year 7, right? With some younger assets on the team, another draft coming, another free agency coming, to your point about them getting better, year over year. But also at that point, you can maybe make a move into the top half of the first round if there's a guy you love, right?
Yeah.
And at some point they'll have to do that. You don't have to, but I would think at some point you would, if you identify the guy that fits what you're trying to accomplish here, you do that as part of, or it's in the cards to do that.
I mean, they've shown a willingness to go up and get a guy they like. I mean, they're not afraid. So they have that in their DNA. I think that's an important part of it. I think the fact that Andrew Berry has been pretty good in terms of, other than the Deshaun Watson trade, has been good in trades in terms of valuation and not overextending and those type of things, where he can make it work. and they get the guy they really want. So, and who knows? Let's say Jalen Milroe declares and Tennessee passes on him or whatever, and he's sitting there at the end of the first round. The Browns move him and get him with that 5th year. Great, like cool. I'm all for that, and that may be the other scenario. We'll some of these things we'll have to see how it plays out, but for like I think some of that we're focused on 2025, and some of that is like 2026's problem. And I think the Browns right this second are looking at this and going, we've just got to focus on 2025.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's how I think they have to look at it if they want to preserve their positions. All right, here we go. This is the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show talking about Kirk Cousins as a potential bridge.
We'll get that information out, but let's dive into our first topic today, guys. It's brought to us by FanDuel. You can tap Think It Tight. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to join today. Kirk Cousins was benched yesterday by the Atlanta Falcons. Real quick, the numbers, financially speaking, from Atlanta's standpoint, which then could tie us back to Cleveland. If the Falcons release him without a post-June 1st designation, they owe him $27.5 million fully guaranteed and have a $65 million dead cap hit for next year. If they release him pre-March 1st with a post-June 1st designation, that same dead cash hit, $65 million, gets spread over 2 years. If they trade him, the team acquiring him takes on his $27.5 million guaranteed salary. That's the same cap hit. But he has to approve it because he has a no-trade clause, which means potentially he'd be open to reunion with Kevin Stefanski.
Isn't there potentially another way that could go down with the trade? Like, wouldn't they eat some of it in a trade potentially?
No, he laid it out correctly. That's exactly how it would work. $65 million in dead cap, 27.5.
Yeah, like in a trade though, like isn't it possible for them to facilitate a trade because it's 27.5?
Oh, I see. They could, but here's what that would then do. You're now giving up a higher draft asset to sort of pay for that. So I think right now, like I said, I would be shocked if it cost you more than like a 6th-round pick to acquire him as is. Now, if you are trying to then, if you're willing to say, hey, Falcons, would you also eat an additional $10 million on this guaranteed salary and restructure the contract, and that maybe it's that 2nd, 3rd round pick or something. Now, is that worth it? Difficult to say. It might be to the Browns, but
depends on where they're at.
We've seen that's expensive. Like it does escalate the price quite a bit. Or if it's now a 4th and a 6th or whatever it is, what do the Falcons think is worth? $10 million is just an example. What do they think that is worth in terms of draft assets?
Yep.
That's an interesting thought on that. Difficult to know, but that is theoretically possible.
Stefanski, if he wanted. Those two work together in Minnesota when Stefanski was the offensive coordinator and Cousins was the head coach. Guys, would you be interested in potentially bringing Kirk Cousins to Cleveland as a bridge quarterback option in 2025?
Nope.
Wow, that was quick.
No, I didn't think this was a serious question.
Especially the cap hit, like anybody's going to trade for him.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
somebody would sign him if he got cut and you could pay a minimum.
If you could get him the Russell Wilson way,
right? Sure. But nobody's taking on $27.5 million.
No chance, and certainly the Cleveland Browns are not.
He'll be 37 next year.
No.
For the trading team, it would be 27.
Guys,
no, he'll be 37.
He'll be 30. Yeah, right.
Guys, he got benched because he stinks. Right?
Yeah,
now.
right.
He's old and he's not playing well. He's not playing good football right now.
Yeah.
The Browns are not going to take on another $27 million. They already got 72, and they're going to pay $100 million next year in cap space to quarterbacks
who are not good.
Yeah.
So I
might have to. I'm just saying. I mean,
well, this is the business you've chosen in terms of quarterbacks cost there's a certain amount of money quarterbacks just cost. I agree. I don't think he's worth $27.5 million, but he certainly wasn't worth $45 million either.
Right.
So
and it's on the books for 1 year. Yeah.
Correct. And that's ultimately where the value is in that. And the fact that the Browns can negotiate that down and not negotiate, they would just restructure it to a certain level. I think Jack Duffin said it was $6.5 million. That would then be drop that down a little bit. Now, if they can get, again, I love the idea of Kirk Cousins saying, no, cut me. And if they can get that to happen, fantastic. I'm here for it. And that would be my dream scenario. If you're asking me to, on a chart, put my top option up there, it's Kirk Cousins for the league minimum over all the other options, straight up.
Agreed.
When I saw it, I did a little deep dive. I was listening to Pat McAfee, and he had Dan Orlovsky on. And if you close your eyes and you just, did a blind survey and listened to what they were talking about, didn't know the quarterback, you would think that they were talking about Jameis Winston, because he said right now he's not seeing the field well.
Leads the NFL in interceptions.
Leads the interceptions. And on top of that, he just doesn't have the same sort of confidence to put the football. He doesn't believe what his eyes are telling him. He's not really mobile in the pocket because he's still coming off that ankle injury. The offensive line isn't really that good. And they're not running play action, which is what Kirk Cousins is traditionally great at. And he also talked about him being slow processing because they're doing a lot of traditional shotgun stuff where if you're not using play action to kind of, freeze linebackers and throw the spaces, you got to be able to diagnose the coverage and get rid of the ball in a timely manner. And his arm doesn't seem to be as strong as it once was. He never had the greatest arm. So, that sounds like Jameis Winston. Actually, that's kind of sound like Deshaun Watson. And I don't know if you want to go and you owe Watson money. You got Winston here and you just sat him down for DTR. I'm not sure that's the biggest need or the biggest free agent name that you can get. But you look at it, if you squint real hard because you talk yourself into it on name brand recognition and the fact that
not at $27 million.
No, if they cut him,
you told me they could sign him for 1 year, $5 million next year.
If they cut him,
all right, you could talk me into it as a bridge quarterback,
maybe, but
not trading for him.
But I think the only way I would do it is if Kevin Stefanski is calling plays. I think Kevin Stefanski would be fine with him because
Kevin Stefanski may be calling plays again next year. Does anyone think that Dorsey's coming back?
Who knows at this point? I don't know.
I wouldn't. I would rather them go back to what they was running.
Dorsey's been good. Like, whatever you want to say about Dorsey, I think the play calling's been good.
It has been.
I wish he had a functional running game they could count on, but they were able to produce this past week, at least on that a little bit. Like, I have the see. This is the thing. Like, there's this notion that again, our forums for people who want to go there and ask questions. Like, there's this idea the Browns should go get Clint Kubiak or whatever. They should replace Ken Dorsey with Clint Kubiak, and the reason is because that Dorsey was brought in specifically to cater to Deshaun Watson, and that since Deshaun Watson's not that guy, they should go with another guy that sort of fits what Kevin Stefanski wants to do. And my argument would be Kevin Stefanski knows what Kevin Stefanski wants to do. Why don't I have somebody else who brings a little bit of a different mindset and get the best of those two worlds, as opposed to, and I'm not suggesting necessarily that Clint Kubiak would just be regurgitating the same things Kevin Stefanski would do. He may have different ways of doing it and could be a great hire. But I see a value in being able to take what Ken Dorsey does, and sort of branching out and getting the best of both worlds. And again, I can look at what has happened. Like all the complaining about, like, you know what I don't hear complaining about anymore? Choice routes. I don't hear any of this crap anymore. Why? Because guys get open and catch the ball. Like Jerry Jeudy's crushing it. And I don't, and again, I don't care who calls plays. Straight up, I've said this all along. I don't care. I thought Kevin Stefanski had a gift for it because he seemed to be able to put quarterbacks in a little bit of an extra position to succeed. But I think Ken Dorsey has done a fine job. I have no problem with either of them calling plays. But I like the direction of the offense in terms of the passing game. All I want is to have a functional running game. And that isn't a Ken Dorsey problem because that wasn't an Alex Van Pelt problem either. It was a Browns talent problem. They don't have, between injuries and just whatever else, they just aren't run blocking in a way that's going to be effective. Like, if they can add that element in, I think they will be good. I don't get the idea at all that Ken Dorsey is going to just with a good running game at his disposal, just be like, screw that, we're not doing it. One, because Kevin Stefanski's still involved, and Kevin Stefanski really likes to run the football when they can do it. And then two, it's only going to strengthen everything else he does. But if you're just asking me about like Ken Dorsey, I sit here and go, Jerry Jeudy is crushing it with Ken Dorsey. I like what I see from Elijah Moore with Ken Dorsey. I want to see more of these guys get growth. I want to see more talent with this. Like, I like this setup. Now, if Kevin Stefanski goes, man, Clint Kubiak would be a better hire, so be it. But like, I have nothing about what I've seen from Ken Dorsey and from what we've heard with the OBR, they have a phenomenal working relationship. Like,
yeah.
They really do. Like, they've really gelled well, and they really like where this is going. So unless Ken Dorsey just gets a head coaching job somewhere, which I don't think is going to happen, or Kevin Stefanski sees such an upgrade that he's going to be like, man, I've got to make this move. He's going to be here. Like, I'm sorry to disagree with Jay and his sources at ESPN. But yes, I expect Ken Dorsey will be here, and I expect they will continue to be good. And I'm desperately hoping Tommy Rees remains here. I like the Browns coaching staff. Now, if Kevin Stefanski wants to make a call on some of those guys, so be it. But like, I like the group they have. I would like to see them stick around and keep getting better. And then if you need to tweak and there's opportunities to get better, so be it. But like, no, I am very pro Ken Dorsey at this point, and let's see where else this can go in terms of this. They made the adjustment from Deshaun Watson. They've put, like, whatever you want to say about Jameis Winston, it's not because guys aren't open. Like, that's the complaint, is he's forcing passes into coverage when there are wide open options that he's not taking or not seeing well. So if you can get a guy who's going to consistently execute and read, and maybe Kirk Cousins is that guy, maybe Sam Darnold is that guy, then they can sort of elevate them in a way that's going to, get the Browns to be successful. But like, I understand. I understand that you can look at the offense and go, well, they by and large they're not scoring enough points. They're not running the ball well enough. They're turning over the ball too much. Some of that, all those things are true, but also when they got it going, they put up tons of points. They threw the ball all over the park. The turnovers are. I don't look at those as a coaching issue.
It's not. It's a quarterback issue.
Like, he's throwing a check down to the other team, or he throws a screen pass to the other team, or he forces balls when the play is broken down. That is a player problem. That can be remedied. But like, overall, like, scheme wise and those things, I'm thrilled with what I've seen from these two, and I have no reason to believe at this point that it's going to change.
The only thing I'm not that I would call to issue, and I don't think it's necessarily their fault because I don't know that they have the horses to do it, is just the lack of any semblance of a run game.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. But
they haven't been able to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's the problem though, is like, last year sort of gives them a little bit of cover, because it was so bad last year too, that like, you're basically, in some ways, you are giving them a pass because it was so bad last year too.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, watching Jermaine Ifedi run block makes me want to cry. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting thing, is that like, they are here next year. They better figure out something. Like, it has to get better. Like, at that point, if they're still crap at running the football, then you have some real questions to be answered about like what is going on. You cannot have no run game 3 years in a row. I understand it can be, there are things that can go wrong with this thing, but you cannot be, I don't know even where they rank at this point, since they've had 2 less than terrible games in a row. But I mean, at points, they were 30th in the league. That can't be the case next year. Doesn't need to be top 10, though. I'm here for it. But it can't be 30th.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, like, you can blame, a lot, but at some point you have to come up with an adjustment or an answer. And that, if you get the personnel and it still doesn't look good next year, then, you're really in a bad spot, because I mean, how do you explain that, right? So,
that's the thing. I think they have really good coaches on it. I want to see them get the dudes. Hopefully, we're talking about a much healthier Nick Chubb next year. Hopefully, we're talking about better run blocking. Hopefully, we're talking about Jerome Ford getting a few more explosive plays. Hopefully, we're talking about a new running back that we're excited about, or two.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where this goes. But obviously, it's got to start with run blocking, all that stuff. But that's absolutely. You know, we're going to keep hammering this all offseason. They have to find a way to run the ball better.
Yeah.
But to answer to Jay's question, yes, I think Ken Dorsey's going to be here next year.
I do too. And then I was going to say this, and this isn't an insult, but like just the way that they react. It's not. I don't want to come down, but the way that they react to the $27 million, it's like, okay, we'll do a little research because it's almost like an NBA thing.
There is
that,
year. Yeah.
Right? Like it's on and off the books, and it doesn't matter if you can work around it. So, like, do some research to understand that it's not just you can't just look at the number like the number. You have to put it in context.
Right. So it's like it's potentially Kirk Cousins at $27.5 million versus Sam Darnold at potentially $42 million versus Justin Fields at $11.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, I still wouldn't love that value on Kirk Cousins, but what I would love is the fact that you have a finite amount of time that you're on the hook for it. That would be the value there. And again, if he can get himself cut, oh my God, it would solve so many problems. Now he still needs to play well. He still needs to get his Achilles right. But if he could play on a league minimum deal, holy crap, the Browns could have so much more flexibility in how they can build up around him and put themselves in a great situation. Like that would help them fix a lot in terms of the Deshaun Watson contract and some of those things. The big number is not going to hit till 2027, but that would still be a huge help.
Yeah.
Because I would too. I would rather to return to Stefanski calling plays. I think we talked about this earlier in the week, but when you compare Josh Allen today to Josh Allen when Dorsey was his play caller, it's like it's unbelievable the difference. He's almost washed the interceptions out of his game, and he's playing, I think, at the top of his game. I think he's maximized it. And what you want out of the offensive coordinator is to whoever you have at quarterback to get them at their best. And I think we all agree that Jameis, although he started at his best, quickly regressed to the mean and is now playing as bad a football as he's ever played in terms of giving the ball away. I'm with you, Bull. If they release him, then it's going to be I saved this window on my phone because actually I was preparing for the show this morning, and I was thinking about that. And on my computer, a box came up, and it said top shooters for
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins. And here they are, the top five. This is on CBS. Seattle Seahawks, number one, is think that Geno Smith is ready to move on. I don't know that you would trade in Geno Smith for Kirk Cousins.
Doesn't make much sense.
They're the same guy. Tennessee Titans at 4, New Orleans Saints at 3, Colts at 2, Browns at number 1. And in their explanation, what they say is at the very last line is if he's willing to take a minimum deal.
Yeah, of course.
And that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But now there would be other suitors for him, and that might drive the price up a little bit. But to your point, there's so many different figures bouncing around on what the hit is going to be the next 2 years for Deshaun Watson. I saw one place 170 million.
70 for next year.
Okay, I saw 170 million for the next 2.
So it depends on if the Browns were to cut him.
They're not going to cut him.
No, they're not going to cut him.
So then if they don't cut him, then next year his cap hit is 72 and the year after it's 72. The 170 you saw is the
and
dead
that's
cap
if they
hit
don't
if they cut
redo the contract
again.
Okay.
Yes. The 170 is dead cap if they were to cut him right now.
Right.
Got it. So most likely it would be 72 million. 72? 70?
Yeah. No, they're going to they are going to restructure this year, and they're going to restructure it again next year. The big hit, and there will be a big hit. It's going to be in 2027. Yeah. But that's going to be offset a little bit by the fact that the cap has continued to expand and expand and expand, in addition to the fact that the Browns know this is coming and can plan around it to a certain point. Now, they're going to still get hit, but ultimately it's going to be 2027 when it does. Now, if you have, this is why I don't think they want to get married to Sam Darnold, one of the reasons. Now, theoretically, you could structure the contract where it's gotten out after a year or two. Yeah, that's far more reasonable to what we're talking about.
This is from Jack.
Yeah. So you say 27, 89.57, 507. That's a huge hit. Now, if the Browns do what we hope they're going to do, they will have drafted their quarterback that they believe in within this window. That quarterback would then offset a lot of that, the fact that they are effectively paying for a franchise quarterback, even though it's a rookie.
Yes.
It will hurt, but you have and the number looks huge, but you have to compare it against what the Browns have in adjusted cap, and their adjusted cap is enormous. Even that difference between the 37 million next year, they're still going to be spending more than other teams, than some of the other teams in the league. Same thing with 26.
Yes.
And again, the cap is expanding every year, and as the revenue keeps spiking because they keep adding new revenue streams in terms of streaming, in terms of broadcasting rights internationally, all these things. So it's going to continue to increase. But yes, 2027 will hurt, and they will have to do things like figure out who their tentpole players are, which is why this team is going to get younger within reason, so they can now have low contracts for their key guys if they have to restructure them or whatever, doing what they've done with guys like Njoku and Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, some of these other guys, that they can then reduce that number for that 27 year and then sort of reset, and they'll be fine. There was a world where let's say just the thing people have to understand with this is if Deshaun Watson was the great quarterback they hoped he would be, this would still exist. So the Browns knew this was coming, and in their world, they were going to then sign him in 2027, reduce his salary or whatever down to $1 million or whatever the league minimum was, with a bonus probably $5 million to offset the 89 that they were going to be paying from this previous deal. So none of this comes as a surprise to the Browns. They've been planning for this for years. So it's unfortunate they are not getting that franchise quarterback out of this, but they also knew this was coming and can plan around it. So for people who are convinced, they're going to be the Broncos for a year, although they're going to be the Saints for a couple of years, they will not. There will be a point where they're sort of limited a little bit, but they can do things to get around that and be fine.
And although the figure is jarring, the most important figure, if you listen and read Jack, because he's excellent at this, and but it's the percentage of the cap that you want to look at, right? You're trying to make the percentage of the cap as low as possible or spread it out as equally as possible. So just the fact that it's the year 2027 makes 90 a lower percentage than it would be this year. So therefore you push it out as far as humanly possible.
Right. So this is the thing, people will look at those numbers, even those numbers just like that, and go, oh my God, they're screwed.
Yeah.
You have to put that in perspective over their overall adjusted cap. The Browns have a ton of adjusted cap, which reduces that number. Now, again, it's still big, but it's not going to be backbreaking the way some people would have you believe.
Absolutely. All right.
Jason thinks they're going to restructure again.
And they may.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone about that last night.
Yeah.
Someone who is an owner of a professional sports team, and I asked, would that be smart? And his answer, without even batting an eyelash, is no. You want to get out of this hell as fast as you can. They're pushing more money down the road.
This is the opposite. This
is
wrong.
Absolutely the worst advice he could possibly give you. I don't know who he's talking to, but no, I understand the idea that you want to be out of this contract and you want it to go away. But no, it literally kills you. Jack has explained in depth. If the Browns were to eat the money right now, they would be boned and non-competitive for 2 years, tearing it down to the studs, the way people have talked about, getting rid of everybody you care about virtually, and starting over. That is the Jay Crawford plan from whoever he's talking to, and it's dead ass wrong.
It's ass backward. It makes no. Anyways, I can't believe we just said that was from a sports owner.
It might be. It might be. I don't know what they own, but they're wrong, and this is why they hope that owner hopefully owns or hires somebody to take care of this, to explain why this is a horrible idea.
Yeah, getting out of as fast as possible. Ridiculous.
Only extends the misery. Get out of it. Take the hit. It's going to be 2 years, and move on.
No,
that's just his opinion.
Yeah.
He's familiar.
There
with
is still
issues.
a cap hit, I believe, in year 3, but it's not huge.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But let's just assume that for next year,
cap hit in year 3 is only $9 million.
Okay,
that's
yeah,
it?
that's
It's
doable.
nothing.
Let's just say that it's $72 million for next year. By all indications, that's what it will be. If you had to take that contract and take on the $27 million, that means that you would have $99 million. The cap next year is expected to be $265 to $275.
Yeah.
For the purposes
Jay, actually,
of this,
let me amend your number. It's actually $72.9 million. So
Okay,
when you had
so
Kirk Cousins, 27
$100 million.
you're exactly $100 million.
100.2.
But that's nobody.
Million.
No team in football is taking that. No team in football is trading for him.
In fact, when you just look at how punitive Watson's contract is, it's like you have 2 franchise quarterbacks that you're paying next year.
Yeah.
And if the cap is projected to be between 265 and 275. For the purpose of this, I just rounded to 270. You can't have $100 million of your $270 million cap on 2 players that are flawed. They're not
numbers are
Patrick
wrong.
Mahomes.
Right.
They're both very wildly flawed. So there's just no way they can take that on. If he's cut
go ahead,
and they're the
pause it.
highest bidder,
I can't.
Okay, so right now, the Browns are scheduled to have total cap allocations for next year, right this second, $334,209,482. The cap space overage they are right now is only $18 million. So his $260 million mark is way off because it doesn't incorporate adjusted cap space. So if the Browns bring down that $72 million in half, which is what Jack's numbers project, the Browns are already down. Just from that would be down $35 million in cap space, which would give them almost $17 million of cap space to work with. So no, that's not how it would work. And they can do other things along those lines. They will restructure. What I expect to happen is they're going to sign Myles Garrett to an extension. They're going to reduce his cap hit. I don't know what his cash is at that point, but his cap hit is $19.7 million. Denzel Ward's cap hit is $24.5 million. They will restructure these deals. They may try to get some pay cuts out of some people. Jack Conklin, theoretically. Although I'm very curious to see how that sort of element goes, because there may be a whole lot of people who are sitting there going, why would I take a pay cut when you got $230 million who's not? So that's going to be dynamic. But regardless, that's how the adjusted cap makes such a big difference. They are not stuck in a world where they operate under that $260 million. Because of how they operate, they're going to be in much better shape. And the Browns will have an estimated $40 million in dead cap, which is a lot, but also is going to, 1, come off the books, and then 2, also plays into how you can sort of end up spending more money so long as Jimmy Haslam is willing to do that. But like I said, it won't be fun in certain respects, and depending on how they spend here, that could change the dynamic. But if Kirk Cousins signs for a league minimum, you have a lot more flexibility. And the Browns still have a lot of draft picks. They have the ability to sign more players. They have the ability to get rid of players, trade players, whatever, and restructure players. They'll be fine. This is why you have to take in context the entire amount. So if you were to reduce Deshaun Watson's numbers to the number you had, suddenly his cap hit relative to 2025 is like 12% of what the team is being paid, or it might be closer to 15 or 18, but it's still not the overwhelming right this second. 26%, almost 27% of what they're currently on the hook for.
Yeah, exactly. I had the percentages somewhere, but they break down. The worst one is 27, but it's, it's like 20 some percent.
If the current cap situation gets 3 wins, how many wins will the future cap situation get?
I know.
It's stupid because of the amount of money that's on injured reserve. Like, we did this last year where we had Nick Chubb on injured reserve. We had all these expensive players on injured reserve, and they won 11 games. So it's insane.
Yeah.
The idea that you're getting, there's this belief that the Browns are getting horrendous return on investment on all their players, which is insane. They can do certain things to alleviate a lot of these issues. Like Jedrick Wills is not going to be here. They could cut Ethan Posick. They could work, Joe Bitonio theoretically could retire. They've got lots of options, but like the idea that somehow the Browns being constricted on the cap now means they can only win one game because that's how money works is an insane way to look at this.
There's not a direct correlation anyways. It's just not the way that it works. It's why you play. I mean, there's so much more impact. I mean, it's an aspect of it, but that's just a silly thought process. Anyways, so that, I mean, I didn't know they were going to start getting into obscure numbers there that are incorrect, but that's, regardless, this is the situation the Browns are in, so there's 3 games left. We're going to get a look at, it is New Orleans dead cap situation is getting fewer wins than last year. Good. Doesn't matter. Doesn't affect anything going on here. The situation moving forward for the rest of the year will be DTR. It looks like probably for 3 games, I would guess, if he can stay healthy. I'm interested to watch that. We're continuing to watch our young players play here. Cam Mitchell. I hope to see a better showing for Miles Harden. You've got
Juwan Briggs with some quality reps.
Juwan Briggs played well. And so we're getting a look at some of these younger players. Yes, there are like 2 buckets of guys, veteran quarterbacks that, we're going to be talking about and exploring those situations, but there's also the chance they fall in love with somebody in the draft, which I hope they do. I hope they see something in somebody that makes them think that he's their guy, because ultimately that speeds up the clock on that situation. And that's just what I'm hoping. But I don't know if that guy is in this class ultimately or will be around. So
yeah, it's difficult to know. But it's one of those things. Nobody knew Brock Purdy was going to be good until he was.
Right.
There's always that possibility, and certainly not one you want to bank on. But that's why you've got to go through the process, evaluate these guys, and find the right fit. Hopefully, you again keep taking quality swings. And if you get enough at bats, and again, if you have a strong process, and I've talked about it, I will continue to talk about it. All I want is the Browns to hit the ball hard with every pick.
Yeah.
Some of them may go straight to the other team, be outs. But if you keep hitting the ball hard, eventually some of them are going to go good places or over the fence, and you're going to be able to capitalize. And we might be seeing some of that with what was a strong process in 2023, save for Siaki Ika, which was a horrible process and has worked out just as a horrible process is likely to work out. But Isaiah McGuire is crushing it. DeJuan Jones, if he can get healthy and be back to playing starting tackle football, he's a tremendous addition. Cameron Mitchell is certainly worth a 5th round pick at this point. It's a question of how much better can he get. Cedric Tillman looks more than validating the 3rd round pick. I'm hoping he gets back on the field. I want to see him play more because I just think he was on a really good run, and I think he's only going to get better. DTR, we shall see this week. I'm hoping Luke Whippler is super healthy right now and getting stronger and can be in the conversation. I make this clear. I do not think you can say, hey, we're going in with Luke Whippler as our starting center based on the fact that you haven't seen him and will not see him in a way that's going to change your mind before the start of the free agency and the draft. But I'm hoping he can get back to being on the track he was, because there was so much to like about his game that I think there's development. And that's just that class. That's also a class that includes Mohamed Diabate, which an up and down player, but I love what he brings. Ronnie Hickman, who I think is ultimately going to take over for Rodney McLeod after he retires, continues to do good things. That's one draft class when the Browns didn't pick in the 1st round and didn't pick in the 2nd round. I'm hoping, and there was luck, and I will say this, there is luck involved. They can't pick Isaiah McGuire or DeJuan Jones or some of these other guys unless they are there to be picked. But when you get that opportunity and you employ a strong process, very good things can happen. I'm hoping that we can see that happen this coming draft class. It will be huge for the Browns to continue. They because of the situation they've put themselves in with Deshaun Watson, they need to be good at this.
Yes.
I think they've gotten better. But again, hit the ball hard. Hopefully you get on a hot streak and get it going in a way that's going to improve your team the way that I think the 2023 class has been able to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. Well said. All right. Anything else before we get out of here, Pete?
Yeah, subscribe to the newsletter. You get that every day, or every day I remember to do it. Check out the OBR content. One of the things that we're going to have coming out this week, which I think is going to be interesting, and I sort of alluded to it a little bit just off the top of my head, are prospects for people you're all going to be watching the college football playoff.
Yeah.
A couple names to sort of keep in the back of your head as you're watching these games, to sort of be like, oh, maybe he's somebody that the Browns should be looking at, or here's a name I should, if they start calling his name out, somebody to keep in the back of my mind for when we do get into the draft stuff, and you're like, oh, I got a good chance to look at him, in the playoff and some of these other things. That's going to be part of it, and certainly we're going to keep bringing the news and analysis and everything else. But subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the YouTube and the podcast. We're going to keep churning out stuff. Hopefully, we'll have some new and exciting things on that front that people can look forward to, and then we'll just keep, as much as we can, try to keep bringing you stuff that we hear. Obviously, we've been pretty good on lately as far as what's going on in Berea.
Tremendous, yeah.
That we can keep that going and keep you guys informed, get you a little ahead of the game in terms of what the Browns are thinking or what they're doing.
Pete and Brad and Noah crushing the insider stuff here the past couple weeks over at the OBR. So go check it out, theobr.com. It's one of the best. It is the best Browns community around, and we're want you to be a part of it if you're not already. So make sure you're doing that. Hit like and subscribe on your way out of here. This has been another edition of The React. I'll be back tomorrow night with All Eyes on Cleveland with Casey Kinnaman and Things I Think I Know on Friday night. Pete Smith, always fantastic. Follow him on Twitter at _Pete Smith_ and at Pete-Smith.bluesky.social.
They got to come out with a better way to shorten those things. But yeah, it's nice over there. I'm not going to lie. Twitter's fine, but
it's so much nicer, cleaner, and all that good stuff. Yeah. Appreciate you guys all for hanging out with us tonight. Sorry, Chef. It's not depressing. Not depressing. It's getting better. It'll get better. I promise. You can only go up from here, brother. Yeah, so hit like and subscribe on your way out. And thank you for tuning in to the OBR Streaming Network. For Pete, my name is Brad. Have a wonderful evening. See you tomorrow night.